Good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. Commissioners check-in for Monday, March 11th, 2024. It's 2:02 p.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. We have Commissioner Carolina Mejia, Commissioner Gary Edwards, and Commissioner Emily Klaus present. Interim County Manager Robin Campbell and Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder. We're here till 4:30 if necessary, and public virtual attendance is available on the Thurston County YouTube channel. First item on the agenda is regarding pending decisions. There are 2 bullet points. One is the budget calendar. We'll start there.
So, good afternoon. You may recall that this was a briefing from last week, March 6th. I apologize, Nicole is out sick today, but basically we're seeking a thumbs up for the budget development calendar that was presented to you. That would be for the rest of this year and into next year, with the understanding that dates may change depending on what comes up during the year, but that this would be the calendar that we would distribute. I see one thumb up.
2 thumbs,
2,
3, and 4.
All right, great.
That's approved. Let's go to the next item, which is dangerous trees, one of our favorite topics, dangerous trees on tax title properties.
You may recall that Jason had let you know on February 13th that we had a few tax title properties, not only with dangerous trees, but a few other issues had come up. So Jason and his team have done the work to have a proposal for the board to approve so that we can move forward with these. And he's going to walk you through what you've got here attached to your packet.
So, good afternoon. As Robin said, I met a few weeks ago with you guys to go over, at that time we had 4 issues. We were able to get 2 resolved, one by the city of Olympia and the other one by the local HOA. But you'll see in your packet, there's still 2 pending with the cost estimates. One cost estimate of $6,100 and the other one of $3,000 to remove trees that the arborist deemed were dead and in danger of falling and doing damage. So I'm just looking for approval to move forward.
How much?
One of them is $6,185.66, and the other one is $3,011.25.
A little over 9,000 total.
We have pictures here, it looks like.
Yes.
Well, was one of them needing trimmed or cut down?
One of them is a limbing of the tree. That is the cheaper one for $3,011. There's multiple dead limbs on it.
Yeah.
They keep falling out. One did do some damage to a fence, neighboring fence.
And is there a reason you're not just taking the tree down?
Cost savings is one.
Yeah, but you
Where
have to go back and trim it again next time the limbs die or whatever.
I believe they plan on trimming it up 30 feet from the ground, which the arborist felt would be sufficient, and the limbs will, I assume, live, the existing ones.
Well, I don't know. The tree is growing and dying all the time, so I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that philosophy. I think maybe the tree ought to come down and get it over with, and it might, I don't know what the cost would be, but let's see what the cost would be, take the darn thing down. Instead of having ongoing problems with these trees.
Yeah, I can definitely get a cost for that.
And maybe your person that's complaining, maybe they don't want it taken down or something. If they don't want it taken down, well, they can take care of it. Let's try and save the taxpayers as much money as we possibly can.
Yes, I can definitely get a cost.
Oh, I
to
mean, I
remove
don't know
the tree.
where my
That's
seat
what the
belts are
board
at.
chooses.
What is the, I mean, I wouldn't even consider cutting the tree down unless there's some diagnosis that the tree is not healthy or
Yeah, and it did not come back. It's just an older tree. It's a large Douglas fir tree. So the lower limbs have died on it.
Which is common.
Yes.
So this is the recommendation from the
Yes,
arborist.
the arborist.
And how close is it to a house or the road or what? I mean,
That one does have a neighboring fence kind of under the limbs of it. And there is a shed about 15 to 20 feet away. That was why the complaint came in. He was worried the limbs would fall and damage their shed.
I just can't vote for doing a halfway job, I guess is my thing. I'd like to know more.
I don't know that I would characterize it as a halfway job. It's not bringing the tree down, but it is following the recommendation of the arborist.
The arborist, he wants to come back a couple of years from now and do it again. I don't know.
We just have to sell it. That's the,
Yeah,
before
we might
that
be able to
happens.
find
Could
somebody
sell it,
that'll
though, we
pay us
might.
to take the darn thing to cut firewood out of.
I guess from where I stand, I'm like, just seeing that other price tag and not knowing what this one would be, I'm okay with the recommendation. These always hurt whenever they come along, but I'm okay with that recommendation.
I have no opinion.
Commissioner Fournier, heard you for a second, but it was garbled.
Sorry, I was just saying I really have no opinion. Whatever's the safest thing to do is.
I'm inclined to go with the staff recommendation due to the nature of the situation. It looks like according to the packet, and from what we know, the, property next door, I lost it where it was, but the limbs falling and causing damage, it seems like we are gonna need to make a decision quicker than, I mean, we need, time is of the essence if it's a dangerous situation, so I'm okay with what we're presented with today.
You don't happen to know how tall that tree is, do you?
I don't off the top of my head. It's an older Douglas fir. It is,
I mean, it could be this big, it'd be 100 years old,
yeah.
especially if it's right near a roadway or gets a little extra water.
A guy who's argued with his wife for the last 10 years to save the tree right behind our fence. Better not. The tree would cut
This
the
is
tree
just where the
down.
democratic process comes in.
But if they've done an assessment and they're saying these are the recommendations, I'd rather follow those myself.
Okay.
So it sounds like you have a majority vote to take a formal vote on this. Okay, direction is to follow the recommendations that are.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, do you want to talk about those other two items, or had you already?
I haven't
The
received pricing.
septic, or?
The septic, I think I got back to Rob on.
So share with the
Oh, okay.
board.
So the one with the septic that I brought to you guys a few weeks ago with the leak, that is actually in Beechcrest HOA. I'm not exactly sure where that's at. I do know it's in Commissioner Edwards' district, when I was looking up information on it, but, Beechcrest HOA has a standing contract with a company to come in and do the septic. They have always thought that septic fell under them. So they will handle all the repairs and whatnot, and they'll actually be reaching out here. I've given them Treasurer Gadman's information. They'll be reaching out about purchasing that lot. So, the other complaint that we received that I brought forward to you was about brush growing over into the roadway out by the Olympia High School. We were able to reach out to City of Olympia. they didn't want to deal with it, but they said they would this time since it's kind of along the right of way. So they're gonna go out and mow that area, and that'll take the brush, cut the brush back away from the road, and should keep the local neighbors happy.
They didn't want to deal with it. It's not their problem.
It was kind of that gray area of whether it was their responsibility or our responsibility,
Because why? What was the grade?
because it's technically, we are holding it in trust, not ownership, but trust, as you guys
It's a
know.
it's a tax title property.
Yes. But they were just saying, well, it's not impeding traffic or anything, but the briars have grown out of ways and stuff, so they just agreed next time they're out that way, they'll just mow it with their mower.
Somebody was complaining to us.
So I do have two more. I'll
See, it pays
mention.
off, it does pay to squawk a little bit.
So I have two more I'll be bringing forward as soon as I receive pricing. One is to clean up a vacant homeless encampment out behind public health. It's on a tax title. The community has brought it forward, wanting it cleaned up since it's an eyesore. And then we have one more tree that another local neighbor reached out about. So in a few weeks, once I have pricing and whatnot, I'll be bringing that back to you guys again.
Question. When it comes to like cleaning up encampments or places where there's like large areas of trash or whatever it is, what's the process for contracting that out? Like, do we put out a bid or do we have someone we work with? Or is it our staff?
Fortunately, it's fell over under the limits on where we would have to go out for bid. So we've gone off vendors off of the state contract.
Okay.
Well, I had a follow-up question, which is just like, what kind of vendor does
Local,
work like that?
there's actually two that are on the state contract, local vendors that go in and deal with the cleaning up the local vacant encampments. So, because some of it is hazmat situations and whatnot at times. So I'll be back with those once I have prices in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Okey doke.
Thanks for putting up with us.
Have a great afternoon.
Me too.
Can
Next
we
up-
keep
yeah.
can we keep a track of this year of how much we spend on tax title properties?
Sure.
We might have to start giving them away pretty quick.
Well, we're, starting off, right, we're just 9,000 in, and we're gonna be much more as Jason brings the rest of the properties in, so I think just having that list of basically this is how much it's actually costing us from the general fund, good to know.
Yeah, Commissioner Fournier.
On the same note, I'd be curious to keep track of how much we're spending on cleanup efforts like the one mentioned earlier.
Your sound is pretty garbled. You said you'd like to keep
Sorry.
how much we're spending on what?
Cleanup.
On the cleanup efforts, on the encampments, like was mentioned earlier.
Got it. Okay. Okay, next up then is reports on external boards and commissions. If anyone has anything they need to report from an external committee meeting, check my list if I have anything.
I could give one quick one.
Go ahead, yeah.
The SWAC committee, I did ask those folks if any of them were aware of anything developing from the vendor that is taking care of our solid waste, about issues that are coming up, and nobody said they'd heard anything from the vendor. I just want to let you know that. So I don't know if that's an individual push, kind of a one-on-one thing, or what's going on. I didn't get any more information to report, other than no information, nobody's been contacted.
Was Karen able at the time to?
Karen was not there.
Not, okay. Or maybe through Jeff,
Jeff was there, though.
did he mention,
No, So I don't think it's went through staff, and I think that's kind of where I'm going with this. You know, what's going on with the individual stuff makes me nervous on the contract. I don't like the idea of this whole fairness issue, maybe of, we had two other vendors that put in for that contract, and
We do have time on the 27th for an executive session on that topic specifically. I had hoped that we would be able to deliver a message to SWAC that we encourage folks not to have one-on-one conversations if they're approaching.
I didn't say anything about that.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think maybe Jeff knows that. I think he was there. He was Zoom.
Okay,
I was there in person.
I'll follow.
That's it, sir. The rest of my committee is nothing nothing earth shattering,
Anyone else?
normal stuff.
Ladies?
Sure. Intercity Transit, they are starting to go through their ERP system. I gave them my blessing as, wish them the best of luck, and hopefully their process is much smoother than what ours has been. And attended the Fair Board meeting, and you just blanked. The theme of the fair is buzz on over to the Thurston County Fair.
Buzz on overdose.
Buzz on to the Thurston County Fair.
Buzz on to the first. Okay, buzz. The bees, pollinators.
The bees, the pollinators.
Okay, good.
And then there's going to possibly be, they're working with one of the nonprofit organizations. There might be a beer garden, so that might be coming back to the fair this year. So I spoke to them about, I guess that falls under Commissioner's item, which falls under kind of the federal list, but I gave them kind of a heads up that we are thinking about putting in an earmark request for the fairgrounds upgrades, and they were fully supportive of that. And we're very excited that we were submitting that. For the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health, we did a succession planning meeting, and happy to announce that the board has decided that basically to follow the same process as Lot. And so we have, starting on March 18th, Joe Avalos will be the interim, and on June 1st, he will take over as the permanent. So he is, that's kind of been set, and so we're very excited about that.
So then he has to be replaced at OHRS?
Yeah, and they're gonna be doing a structure change as well, and they're talking kind of doing that. It has to be approved by the Healthcare Authority. They're hoping to get that done end of April, beginning of May. And so with that, it will kind of fill in kind of the rest of that. His position, it's gonna change to more of a clinical director instead, so. That is all.
I'll let Commissioner Fournier report on the mayor's forum we were both at. He may remember more about it than I do.
I'll do my best, but my reception is a little shoddy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so I attended the mayor's meeting on Friday along with Chair Mincer. And at that, each different jurisdiction gives its report, and so we got updates. It was hosted by Yelm, so Yelm kind of led off, and there was a lot of talk about things that are coming up in Yelm. Mayor DePinto shared with us that they have nearly completed their dog park. The meeting was held out at the Public Works building, so it was right across from their dog park. It was nice to see that. Got updates from Tenino about work going on in the park and their efforts to finish the Floyd pool and get it started before the summer's going. And then there was it was a lot of fun. I thought at this time I got to talk to them a lot about kind of the things going on at the county and some of the kind of the inner politics and the different nuances with having elected officials as department heads essentially, and kind of the differences that that I was kind of going from a former mayor's perspective, but I got to share with them kind of a lot of the different kind of experiences between a commissioner versus being a mayor. So it was a good meeting.
Any other committees you want to report on?
Negative.
Okay. So I had that one. I went to the spongy moth presentation, which was really interesting. They're gonna hit basically spongy moths. There's gonna be,
Oh, a spray activity gonna take place.
yeah,
Okay.
an organic chemical, well, it's not chemical, it's like some kind of biological product that they use. And it's really interesting how they target the species. Like, they know exactly when the larva, it's the caterpillars that eat all the leaves. And they know exactly when those caterpillars, they know roughly when those caterpillars are gonna come out. And so in order to make sure they only get those caterpillars and not any other species caterpillars, they basically have to be on it, because it does vary from year to year, depending on weather conditions. So their pilots and everything have to be on 24/7 like call, so that when the caterpillars sprout, they hit them. And basically Griffin School is the epicenter, and it's a radius, I don't know, half mile or something, circle where they are right around Griffin School.
The DNR or?
Washington State Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
It's right around the bottom of Steamboat Island. Anyway, that was pretty interesting. Sentencing Guideline Commission met, and we just basically talked about what we want to spend our time working on. What we came up with was 3 priorities. One was finishing the work from last year that we didn't quite finish up on, recalibrating the criminal offenses to the new proposed grid, which dropped and will be discussed next legislative session. Secondly is to work on sensing alternatives, trying to study their efficacy and how we might expand them and make them more useful. And the other one was on, which I'm really kind of excited about, is they call it persistent offender, which is basically like your 3 strikes law. And looking at studying that and how other states are moving away from that, and what ways are they doing that, and how is it working in Washington, and what recommendations could we make to modify our persistent offender laws so that they fit better with the data on what actually works. So those are things we'll be working on at Sentencing Guideline Commission. I also met with the mayor, or not the mayor, the municipal judge of the city of Olympia. I don't know if you guys have met with her yet. I think she's gonna be reaching out. I might have been the first.
I think this afternoon I'm supposed
Okay.
to.
Well, she'll tell you about the new, they're gonna be moving to the office buildings across the street from where they are now. They're gonna be getting more, they're gonna put a hold on more space than they need, so they can sort of decide how to program out or subcontract out the partners that would be in the building. But what she hopes to do is set up a courtroom space that's specifically designed for therapeutic courts. And if they're able to do that, then they'd like to talk to us about partnering with our therapeutic courts if they can kind of create like new innovative configuration that would be better, better conducive to the work they do in those types of courts. Then they're thinking, well, maybe, some of our courts could partner, and she's had some preliminary discussions with our judges, Judge Skinder in particular, who's the drug court, and the presiding judge. So more to come on that. And also there's going to be expanded resource hub. She's aware of our resource hub, so she wants to make sure that we're not, like, if there's a way to do it in a way that's complementary to each other and not in competition for vendors or providers. So those are discussions that we should have, Nate, or however it is that can be done well and not poorly is something we should try to get out in front of. That's it for my. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna do a TCAP update. So there's been several stakeholder meetings that have been going on, and this is the Thurston County Court Alternative Program. And me and Leah have gone and met with all of the advisory boards. We've met with the Homeless Advisory Board, we've met with the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Board, and we've met with the Veterans Advisory Board. This past Friday, we held a joint meeting with
basically all of our stakeholders, the court, prosecutor, pretrial services, public defense, public health and social services, and San Diego brought forth their whole team, and we just had a joint meeting to see if kind of anyone from our end had any questions for them. And it was just a very, very engaging conversation. So I think we're getting right towards the part where we're going to start working on an RFP to go out to the community, but
So, that makes me think, I spent a long time on my side of that conversation with Judge Noguera, talking about the concept of the regional jail that we prioritized and seeing if I could get her excited about that. And I thought about, but shied away from bringing up the court alternative program. She didn't bring it up, which made me kind of wonder if she even knows what we're trying to do. So if you have that meeting with her, maybe if you could make that one of your topics to explain.
Yeah.
Because she's got ideas on her side about, she wants to make, she didn't go into a lot of detail, but she said, I want to make a lot of changes to Olympia's community court. So there may be changes coming there, and it'll be interesting to just compare and contrast and for us to know what each other is doing.
Yeah.
Commissioner Klaus.
I don't have any, the only one I had was the ASO update, which Commissioner Mejia went over already.
Okay, perfect. That's very interesting, that piece to see. Wasn't sure that's how they were, we never discussed that, kind of the succession, so.
Got out just in time, so.
Yeah. Okay, well then, next up, if that's it for external, I know your email had told the sheriff 3 to 3:30, but we're about half an hour ahead.
We are,
And the next item up, we could skip to other commissioner items. And then,
that
Okay, so
would
let's
give
just-
us a little more time to see
Yeah.
if one of the,
let's do that. Let's go ahead, and that way we can try to meet the timing that we provided to the sheriff's department about the executive session. So we're going to the last item on the agenda, other commissioner items. Commissioner Mejia is here.
Josh and Ashley are joining, so I have two, and so. we
They are
wait to-
involved in those?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect timing.
Ready for us?
Yes. So this is a follow-up to the housing allocation. And so as I had reported before, I had abstained from the vote at TRPC. And really wanted to have that time to talk with staff. And Ashley and Josh broke it down to me very well and kind of where we are. And so kind of what was explained to me is that basically we're under very tight timelines. But I think we've all have heard concerns from the community in regards to the housing allocation and that 14% being too high and not matching up with the Sustainable Thurston goals, which is at 5%. And knowing that, Department of Commerce is gonna look at that 14% as well and not going to be in agreement with it, because it really does not comply with our GMA goals as well. And so just going forward, I think is, one of the bigger barriers that got explained to me is that we really, to go back to that 5% or to go somewhere in there, we really it cannot be done without doing the countywide planning policies or reopening that back up. And so the question is on when we need to do that, right? And if the board is ready to engage in that conversation. And understanding that from staff that 14% might get smaller because of that. Department of Commerce has shared their concerns. But it wouldn't really get it down to the 5% that we've heard from the community as well. So my question for the board, I guess, is should we direct staff to work with TRPC to open up the countywide planning policies? And this way we could have deeper discussions with our city partners
And like taking on more of those housing numbers in the future.
What's in the countywide planning policies that has to be redone?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, the way that the buildable lands inventory is structured. So the new housing allocations are based on the approved buildable lands analysis, which, basically from like 2019, 2020. So to essentially relook at that and see whether it should have a different methodology.
And take into account sustainable Thurston, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big
Yeah.
part of it. So when the buildable lands analysis is done, it does not currently take into account the 5% sustainable Thurston goal. There's an appendix currently in the buildable lands report that says it should potentially, but it doesn't now. And so opening up the countywide planning policies would say, we would like to insert as a community that 5% goal into the discussion. But the cities, to Commissioner Mejia's point, which you did a great job, there's a lot kind of moving pieces. The cities are under a tight timeline for their comprehensive planning, and so they need to move forward on this housing allocation. And it's tough because all these percentages and all these numbers, it's just numbers right now. Because you still have to have somebody build and develop and do all of the things that require development. So it's tough to get hung up on this 14% versus the 5% versus likely what Commerce will come back and say 9 to 11% of the housing should be in rural Thurston County. And so that's what this is all about, is do we think that the future should be 14% of housing in the rural area, 5% like Sustainable Thurston says, or probably somewhere in the middle like Commerce is gonna come back with? And so what Commissioner Mejia is presenting is in honor of being respectful to the cities, should we just let this thing keep moving? And B, should we also open up the countywide planning policies to have the sustainable Thurston goal wrapped into the buildable lands report?
Is this not part of the docket process?
How is this not part of the docket process? The housing chapter is part of the docket. This is a Commerce-initiated request that all of the counties in Thurston County are doing. All the counties in Washington State are doing.
Yeah, so the housing piece is docketed. I think what we've heard from the community is they kind of want us to go back and take a fresh look at something that the county and other jurisdictions through the TRPC board adopted in 2019, 2020. They see the housing allocation, this new requirement from the state, as an opportunity to sort of start this broader community discussion about, hey, what happened to Sustainable Thurston? Should we take a fresh look at that? But it's a bigger procedural lift that goes beyond our docket here at the county.
It's a timing issue as well, in terms of the CPPs really need to be kind of discussed and ratified, or whatever the adoption process is, really before any of the jurisdictions do
That's right.
their process. So, what's the conversation about reopening them concurrently? That would be problematic.
I think it's for
Future.
So it's like as we move into the next buildable lands inventory, would there be a different methodology that would be used and different assumptions than the one that we currently have?
I'm curious about that connection, because it's just a title, but buildable lands just means there's land to be built on, doesn't mean you have to build on it. So why doesn't GMA an overlay to build, like, I'd want to know how much buildable land there is, even if I was saying as a policy matter, we're only going to make sure 5% of new housing goes to rural. But so why does it have to be, why does buildable lands analysis have to change it just because we want to focus?
On the 5%?
I think it's
Being
the,
buildable doesn't mean it has to be built on, or you have to build,
That's
So-
actually, sorry.
oh, no, I think the best insight into that is actually looking into the appendix that was done for Sustainable Thurston. So to get to that 5%, what that appendix identified were changes the cities would have to make to accommodate more housing. So they'd actually have to upzone potentially within their city limits or UGAs to take more of that projected housing.
some of that's happened. The whole missing middle thing, right? Was
Some
a
of
big
it.
fight in Olympia and they passed it.
Some of it, not
And
necessarily all of
Lacey-
it.
And Lacey, and I think has also done that as well.
So
Not all of it, though, you're saying.
Not all of it, or it, that refresh hasn't taken place. Like maybe we're a lot closer as a region than we even know, but there hasn't been like an updated analysis to say that, oh, you know, this is how much could be accommodated within the cities.
And the 14%, my last question, the 14% that we're at, like, remind me, how did we get to that number?
It's based on what our lands would accommodate, and a lot of it is backward looking in terms of growth projections. So it's like what has been happening in the county, and then how much housing could the county in its current zoning with all of its current restrictions within, you know, environmentally sensitive areas accommodate.
So it's maxing us out under current zoning laws.
It's a blend of a lot of different things, but it would be more on that end of the spectrum.
And this goes all the way back to when we were presenting this housing allocation conversation months ago. Commissioner Edwards said, how is this gonna work with growth management? You're gonna get this percentage out there that's gonna put a whole bunch of stuff out in the rural community. So now this is where we are. We're where you said we were going to be at that 14%. And Commerce is looking at that saying, that's too much for a growth management act. And we think it's gonna be less, but our other community members, and so this is why we're being responsive, are saying it should be even less. It should be at that 5%. And so 14, 9 to 11, 5%, those are the three kind of big buckets to look at. There really isn't potentially anything for us to do. So the options, the options are option 1, do nothing, say nothing. Option 2, say, hey, let's think that we should consider less and go on with Commerce, who's also gonna say we should have less percentage. And option 2B is also to say we should open up to countywide planning policies in the future. Option 3 would be stop it all, shut it all down, say to the cities, we think that we should open up the countywide planning policies right now. To Commissioner Minster's point, it's gonna take months and months to understand what that's going to be, and it's gonna slow down their comprehensive planning process. And so we're trying to do this balance between the input we're hearing from the Sustainable Thurston 5% and the city's need to keep moving forward. And so that was essentially the presentation, getting this conversation started. Staff's recommendation would be to continue moving this process at TRPC with an understanding that we should open up to countywide planning policies to at least have that conversation that Commissioner Minster is relaying.
Option 2B.
That's essentially what it is, to be continued.
Where are we at now? You say we're at 14?
We are at about
Provisional.
14, yeah, and then, what we've heard from the state is, guess what? To your point, Commissioner Edwards, we can't really accommodate multifamily housing and really any housing in that 0 to 50% area median income, so we already know the number's gonna shrink, we just don't know what it's gonna
So
shrink
are
to.
we considering affordable housing? Are we even
That's,
thinking about affordable housing? How about, are we counting outside the city limits as UGA or outside of UGAs?
So, okay.
14% is the rural outside of UGAs.
Outside of UGAs.
So some of the choices we get to make are allowing more development in Grand Mountain UGA or working with our city partners to allow more development within their respective UGAs. So those are all conversations that are gonna happen as part of the comprehensive plan update. It's just whether we do that in line with kind of the work that's already underway or whether we halt everything, and, you know, use a different assumption.
Is regional planning, are they considering those folks that have now found out they can work from home? They can live on the home property, put an ADU there for mom or grandma or something. And it also cuts down on the traffic on our highways and carbon footprint. So there's some balances in different ways that, and affordability. It's a heck of a lot more affordable for a family to build an ADU than a whole nother family dwelling.
Those are all good parts of the conversation, certainly.
How is, so the process for reopening countywide planning policies, can that be done on a limited basis? Like we're gonna address one issue, or is it like all or nothing kind of thing? And I mean, is there a whole process like embedded in law or code that tells us how long that's gonna take and how many subcommittees have to be formed, and what does that look like?
We've been digging into that, go for it, Ashley.
So it takes a minimum of 4 jurisdictions out of 7 to open them up. So that would be some work on all of our parts to see if other jurisdictions want to open them up. They can be open on a limited basis. Like right now, they're open for updates to tribal engagement as required under state law and for urban growth area swaps, that recent legislation that was passed. It hasn't been done a lot, and really the structure for opening them and amending them is built into them. So that is also something that could be discussed. I do know that as we were working on the housing allocations, there was already discussion about opening them up once we got through the comprehensive plan updates to say, hey, is this the process that we should memorialize within the countywide planning policies? And is there any work that needs to be done to the buildable lands analysis methodology?
Well, it sounds to me like, one of the things I would be concerned about is, interrupting what all the things the cities are doing, we need to be doing. But it sounds like that problem is solved. We just asked them. And if 4 of them want to agree with us, then we have agreement, we have consensus to reopen and fix this. If they don't, then we don't. And then we can tell the community, we tried, Thurston County tried, but cities don't want to do it. So blame your city elected officials, and we're gonna go on with the commerce numbers. Right?
Yeah.
Cities either agree or they don't. It sounds like they have veto power. If they don't want to engage in this process, then the countywide planning policies can't be reopened, right? Because we don't have 4 votes.
But I still think we need to look at, in the UGA with ADUs and such, to make it easier to live on one single property. I don't see anything wrong with, in the ADU, making it real easy to create affordable housing. I don't know if you want to call it starter housing, school teacher housing, whatever it might be. But I think if we're going to truly try to solve a problem, we need to have affordable housing right in the middle of this mix. Because otherwise it just isn't possible. Right now, I don't know what it is, but I bet it's getting close to 30% of the cost of housing is government regulatory oversight.
So that's a good, I'm sorry, man.
No, well, it plays back all the way back. We had this conversation in 12, 13, 14 with Commerce. The whole Mazama Pocket Gopher came out of those kind of discussions on trying to discourage growth in rural America. That's the bottom line. The Mazama Pocket Gopher lives from California to British Columbia, from the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. This, in Thurston County, is a social experiment, has nothing to do with the pocket gopher. You can't get rid of the pocket gopher. It was the first critter that came back after Mount St. Helens blew up. So you have a heck of a problem getting rid of them, but it was a push to consolidate the population and to see what the population would handle and put up with. So, it's all part and parcel. This has been talked about for years, so.
Thank you for that input, Commissioner. Staying focused on
Can I ask for,
Commissioner Mejia's abstention at TRPC.
yeah, can I ask for clarification then for Commissioner Menser? So your suggestion is that we bring this to the cities and ask them if they're willing to sign on to this, and if they're not, then,
Then it's 2B.
So I think what I'm hearing is option 3, which would be the county says to, so I say to my counterparts at the cities, we're hearing that constituents would like to wrap the Sustainable Thurston 5% goals into the buildable lands report, but we need to open the countywide planning policies to do so. Would you like to do that?
If they would, then we're all good, because we all agree.
And
If
knowing
they
that,
won't, then they veto it, because we need 4 votes, sounds like.
and knowing that we need to do that quickly to meet your comprehensive planning goals at the cities.
Fast as possible,
Okay.
on a limited basis, just on the issue to make the Sustainable Thurston housing allocation fit.
Okay.
to give them any more information on how to make that decision and staff timing?
Nope, they are TRPC, we're all the jurisdictions are signing on to an agreement to have them do the land capacity analysis. And so I think as long as we do it quick enough to have that land capacity analysis reflect, you know, the joint decision of 4 jurisdictions, then I think it would be doable.
Yeah, so we will pose the question, if this is the will of the board, pose the question to the planning directors and get their input on that very specific topic.
And you can tell them, you know, if there's, I mean, you can frame it in a way that's, you know, not heavy-handed,
Yeah.
so to speak. Like, you could frame it as like, look, we have a desire to want to fix this up front. And if you're willing to join us in that and, you know, expedite timelines, great. If you're not, then our proposal will be, you know, just what you said, suggest that we do that in the near future, and maybe we, you know, work with Commerce on the numbers that they're gonna, whatever, you know, however you characterize the 2B, you know.
Yeah.
Make it clear that we're amenable to work on either basis, but we have, and I'm just speaking for myself, and if the board doesn't agree, that's fine. But I'd rather just get it right rather than kicking cans down the road. I mean, Sustainable Thirst has been around for 10 years now. And here's a real tangible way, because of this new change in state law, that those community goals can be put into our planning. So let's just do it. Like, you know, we were 10 years behind on the last comp plan, an extra 3 or 4 months or however long to fix something, get it right, seems worth it to me. If, you know, if our jurisdictional partners want to engage with us on that.
At the pleasure of the board. Any other thoughts on that?
I think we ought to be at 20%. It's probably different than some, but it's a democratic process.
I don't know, you guys.
No, I'm
Okay with that? Commissioner Fournier, any thoughts on the approach on this?
I'm just listening, and I'm still trying to make sense of the whole issue,
Yeah.
to be honest, and like what really, you know, like there's planning, and then there's actually like practical boots on the ground operations, and like this seems like it's like high in the sky planning stuff, but what actually translates into what actually happens in the county.
You're right on, Commissioner. That's where I started, was a lot of this is just percentages, but you need to have somebody to actually have boots on the ground in the end. So you're checking. That's right on.
My experience with these OFM numbers and, you know, these requirements, it never really translates out into real world situations. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. I've expressed that frustration on other contexts with you.
Do we have thumbs up from the?
See 3 thumbs, I guess.
I mean, it's gonna go ahead.
For that. No, I do see 3. I can't see Commissioner Fournier, but sounds like we got the majority of the board.
I know this is gonna go forward, and we're gonna keep talking about it. I just want to be cautious of like spending time and money, you know, wasting treasure on something that doesn't really reflect what happens.
Yeah, we have to do this anyway, and even though it is an esoteric planning process, I think that we can do it quickly as the board is giving us the thumbs up to do so.
Okay.
And I think it's also ultimately as part of the conversation is to be realistic for Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Fournier, in that these are aspirational goals that will take a long time to bend the curve, only because when GMA came on the scene, it kind of locked in this geography. And when you already had a large number of homes in the rural areas, relatively speaking, it's going to take that much longer to tip the scales.
In reality, it's gonna get overwhelmed at some point. It's not, you know, that's what they want, but the reality is, like you say, a lot of places are already there.
Okay, is that what you needed? Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, that was a hefty commissioner
I
item.
know, I'm sorry.
What else you got, Commissioner McKee?
Okay, second one is just wanted to give the board a heads up on our federal requests this year. There's going to be 3 of them. It's going to be election security is going to be one. The next one is going to be the fairgrounds upgrades. And the third one is going to be the juvenile cameras. And so we are setting meetings up with all the different partners to kind of address the three of them and get started on that. We will also be supporting the EDC with the meat processing plant request.
What was the second one? Sorry.
Fairgrounds upgrades.
Fairgrounds, okay.
So I will draft up an email for Robin to send out to department directors and elected officials. So everyone kind of is on the same page that those are the three items our lobbyists will be working on for.
Will they help us
for your
dial
notes.
into like, is there an opportunity to create like a, zero carbon building at the fairgrounds, like an example or whatever, and then it plugs into the climate, there's all that money from the, whatever it was, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and, I mean, crossing over, like, you wouldn't necessarily think of a fairground upgrade and a climate
Well, I
commitment.
think you could, solar panels on all the buildings out there.
Or just, whatever that fits across those different funding streams would be great.
I believe Josh also is streamlining through the emergency part as well.
Are we only allowed those three? Is that what the deal is?
Well, it's really like we're pushing it with three. It has to be, the more concise it is, the farther we're able
I
to
think the
get.
meat processing plant.
Well, the EDC is going to be submitting that, yep, and we're gonna be supporting it, so I'll be coming here asking for a letter of support from the board once I've sat down with the EDC and kind of walked through that process. And I have also reached out to Pierce County for a letter of support, so working on that as well. So we are definitely supporting them with that application. And then the third item, can I still go with one more?
Go for it.
Okay, I will bring
You're on a roll.
Matt and Taylor to talk about the arts competition. And I believe comms team just needs kind of thumbs up from the board. And so I'll have Matt and Taylor present this.
All right, everyone, Matthew Ransley, Executive Aide to Commissioner Fournier. We talked about this very, very briefly at a commissioner check-in prior, but it was an idea to have a countywide art contest. The idea is to bring in youth, adults, and some of the county employees as an opportunity just to engage in a fun opportunity to showcase their own skills in art. We are currently in the planning stages. Taylor and I, along with Anna, has jumped in to help. We are looking at a timeframe of late April to early June, hopefully sealing the deal by the time school is out. So we're working back from essentially the time of school is out to create a timeframe. The thumbs up portion, we just need to make sure that all of the commissioners are sort of on board, ready to also share this with their constituents once we get that final timeframe. But then also just to give a thumbs up to the PIO staff to jump in and assist us when opportunity is needed.
I thought Wayne was gonna be the head of this whole thing.
He's gonna be the head artist.
The fun section of government.
We're bringing in everybody to the fun parade.
Did I miss anything?
We have a theme this year, and our theme is going to be the essence of Thurston County, so what makes Thurston County feel like home. We'll have this open to its multimedia, so it could be a sculpture, a painting, within reason. And we want to make sure that it's disseminated to not only school-age children, but also college children, college-age adults, to make sure that we can pull in all facets of the community, not just youths and the county employees.
So is it like gonna be by category of age or something?
So I currently have it in this planning process right now. We currently have it into 3 different categories. There's youth 0 to 18, adult 18 plus, and then we have a different county employee section. And then that would go, we would have it come before you guys and you guys could pick. We could have more categories. We kind of were waiting to see what the submissions look like. You know, if we have a huge submission, maybe we could bring it down and go into some categories. But for right now, just kind of the age brackets and then separate out the county employees.
And the ultimate goal is not some sort of cash prize or anything like that. It's an opportunity to allow those pieces of art to then be showcased. There's a lot of white space. We obviously will have to work with the landlord and all of that to hang it up, but we thought it'd be a great opportunity to kind of showcase what the county and the county citizens are doing in the actual county building. So you have an opportunity to showcase it on walls and things.
One thing that Josh mentioned too is that the fair has, mural walls that we might be able to borrow. Rob did, it wasn't Josh. And that might have been an option for not putting things on walls, because I know that's scary, this isn't our building, but as an option to display. But we don't want to limit it to things on walls either. Sculptures would be great, we could put one on the board, right? Like there are different options here, so.
Are you gonna utilize the fair as part of this process of bringing that artwork that's produced? I'm gonna draw some stick men myself.
Yeah, no, we did talk about that, because, we have our pancake breakfast was on during the summertime, and we would have an opportunity, there could be an opportunity to display some of this artwork at the fair. We haven't gotten into that far, we want to see what our submissions are, but at this point, we just kind of get buy-in from the commissioners and be able to let our communication staff kind of disseminate this once we kind of get approval.
If you could put like, when they apply, like what commissioner district they're from.
Yeah.
And each commissioner could do like a commissioner's choice for their best of their district.
Yeah.
It would be like another kind of a fun prize for people.
Great idea.
So are you thinking people would submit photos of their artwork, that they'd actually, maybe put the artwork on display during the contest? What's the?
Yeah, so the thought
concept
is
there?
that the actual item, whether it be a painting or a sculpture, whatever, is ultimately the things chosen would be the actual item on display.
In terms
Right,
of
I get that, but
submission.
how about for the contest part?
I've seen it done both ways, so I don't know that we are dead set on one or the other. I do think, depending on how many people show interest, it might shape the ultimate process.
Be sure to include facilities in your
Yes,
conversations.
absolutely. Any other questions?
So what do you need us to do?
We just need
Just
you
want you
to,
to have buy-in. We just want you to like the idea.
well, and we also need a thumbs up just for PIO's comfort in helping us develop like a social media plan.
3,
I say go for it. Run with it.
5 thumbs.
Perfection.
It's part of the fun plan.
Yay!
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
That's it, I promise.
All right, we're getting really close to 3, but is there any other commissioner items? None for Commissioner Claus, none for me, Commissioner Edwards?
Oh, I got quite a few.
Okay.
But I don't know, aren't we gonna get on with?
We could jump to the sheriff and come
Yeah, I
back.
think so. Yeah, I
I
think
think
we
like
do.
2 minutes.
Okay,
Is that okay?
we'll reconvene at 3:05,
Cool, thank you.
and then we'll go straight to sheriff.
Okay, I'll go to the restroom then.
picking up with our commissioners check-in, we're up to item 3.1. And there is some preliminary information that the sheriff has provided. He's here with Under Sheriff Pearsall and Chief Carter. We have some information, and I had previously had conversation with Commissioner Klaus, and I suggested that Travis be here because the question was kind of, can we have the informational piece about the building, the needs, stuff in an open session so the public could hear it versus like we get down to brass tacks about dollars and cents and negotiating a real estate transaction. That would be, of course, appropriate for executive session. But it seemed to, and I apologize to speak for you, but it seemed to me that Commissioner Klaus's concern was that we don't, subsume a whole bunch of not executive session stuff, which is why I thought Travis could weigh in. And as I'm looking through the slides that the sheriff has provided, this all seems like stuff that we would discuss outside of executive session. And then if there's, then we can move into executive session. And the sheriff is nodding. So I think we kind of need, since we, the three of us have a lot of background on the sheriff department's facility and needs, but the new commissioners don't have as much. And this is a lot of good information as I can just quickly scan it. So my proposal would be to kind of go over this outside of executive session. And I'll let Travis stop me if I got something wrong. And then when we get to the actual topic of a potential negotiation, we would go into executive session to discuss any details related to that. Does that cover your issue, Commissioner Klaus?
Yes, thank you.
Travis, would that be in accordance with the laws as we should be following?
Yeah, so as I understand it, executive session would be under RCW 4230-110-1C, which says to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of decreased price. This exception, commissioners, is typically interpreted fairly narrowly. There is some case law around it, and I think the general guidance is to have discussions about even things such as factors to consider when looking at a real estate purchase. And that is all, should be done through open session. The executive session itself should be limited to just the dollar amount for the minimum offer that you're hoping to come out with through that executive session. Again, the whole reasoning is that if you disclose it, it will tarnish the negotiation, and that's why that exception is there. But again, everything from the description of facility, improvements, the nature of the real estate that's in consideration, that all should and can be discussed in open meeting. I don't see the sheriff's PowerPoint in front of me. I don't think I've seen it, but assuming it's all discussion about logistics and alignment, those kinds of practical considerations, I think the process makes sense.
Now, I do have to say that when looking at subsection C, it looks like when it's a county property that we're offering for sale or lease, we're under B as I read it, which is when we're considering selection of a site or acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase. Am I right about that?
Yes, that's correct. And I would also say that it's been the county's practice for at least the last 14 years that when we talk about price, we're also talking about things that affect price, such as the condition of the building, any conditions on the property, because that all informs the strategy that the county would take in making an offer and what the price they're willing to offer is.
Yeah, no, and give me go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point in having an executive session available to us is so that we can protect the county's interest in negotiations. And if we are being, you have to be open, but if we're talking about, in the public, the specific address, the listing, the things like that, we're letting the cat out of the bag for negotiation. So Assistant County Manager Robin was just saying that there's a whole bunch of things that affect the price and how we negotiate. So I personally like to be a little more on the conservative side and not show cards when you're looking to purchase real estate. And you know, these discussions about the sheriff's department's needs and facility needs, they're not brand new discussions. These discussions, like Chair Menser said, these discussions have been ongoing for years. So this is not a new discussion. This is not a new thing. And I just want to caution us against, you know, affecting what could be ultimately a price point.
So let me let me pick up from there, folks. Just as a general matter, I literally looked at this issue 5 minutes ago. I've been working on a Court of Appeals brief, so I'm working off the assumption that this was under C, where that is a more stringent exemption. But if it is, and again, I'm coming in flying off the seat of my pants, admittedly. But if this is a situation where you're invoking B by its very nature includes a broader variety of possible discussion that could be covered in executive session. Because again, I was just looking at C in a tunnel, but yeah, I think that's correct that B is more permissive. As to whether or not you want to discuss certain things in open session ahead of time, I think it's just a matter of making sure that discussion does not somehow cause issue, and I think the difficulty here is that some of this is you're trying to get ahead of things and try to be transparent, but at the same time you don't know, the caution is warranted, especially when you're looking at leasing out and trying to get that transaction completed. So it's kind of difficult to set sideboards in terms of what you can say in advance and what you can't. What I may suggest is going through the executive session with that conversation limited to, a discussion about what that, what that transactional decision may be. And then I think, it's incumbent upon the board at that point to ultimately have an open discussion afterwards, both to announce, just announce the process, things going forward. But if this has already been discussed in open setting, and you're ready to deliberate about the actual decision that you need to make, I think that is all fair to be, and perhaps even proper to be brought in executive session. Again, looking at subset B.
I want to ask a follow-up if I could. Would a appropriate line be that we have a preliminary conversation about the inadequacies of the current building and what the needs are? And then as we shift to discussion of anything specifically related to the proposed building, then that goes into executive session in terms of why that would meet the needs, what the condition is, what the price is. Is that a good line to draw?
Commissioner, I hear you, and I think that makes what I'm hearing is walking in and describing in open session the need, the reason, and the basis for moving forward to an acquisition, right? That history and that conversation is and should be a public conversation. The exact specifics of the property, things I talked about before in terms of the condition of the property, all the factors that Rick knows more about than I do, that go into that deliberation, that should all be done under exec. Yeah.
Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you. I would like to make a recommendation just so we can move forward. I would recommend, since this does talk about specifics of the property, that we have this discussion in executive session and have this presentation from the sheriff and then hear from Rick and kind of just have a broader discussion. And then just to honor Commissioner Klaus's request, maybe have a future work session whenever scheduling allows with the sheriff to kind of talk about the, not specifics about the building, but why the need of a building, or kind of like how it's split up, and just talking like that in a public session. Does that honor your request?
Not quite, because my concern was regarding like making the decision. I mean, if we make the decision and then later on have an open meeting about it, that doesn't really alleviate my concern, but I'm okay with some of the suggestions I've heard. I mean, preliminary conversation about the concerns and then potentially coming back into open session after we're done with executive session to summarize what we discussed, however much we can. I'm okay with that as well. I just thought if we could be a little bit more transparent, understanding there are some components of the conversation that there is like, you know, there's risk if we have that part publicly, but I think however much we can share in an open meeting, I would like to do that.
I'm seeing parts of your presentation that relate to that need and the limitations of the current building. So I don't see why we can't just address that. And then we'll go into executive session to talk about specifics of the proposal. Commissioner Edwards.
That is to Commissioner Klaus's wanting to summarize what we talked about in a executive session. I don't think we can do that. I don't know,
Any direction from the board needs to be done in an open session.
yes,
But talking about what we've discussed in an executive session is not.
yeah, right. We're kind of limited on that, is what I'm saying.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then we could have, I mean, I know we need to move forward with this, but it doesn't quite make sense to me that we could decide ahead of time, like, let's have this in an open meeting versus let's have the executive session and then we can't talk about the details in an open meeting because we had the session already.
I'm looking at council. Are we right? But can we come out of executive session and then summarize?
Well, I mean, it really depends about the substance. It's one of those, but I think Commissioner Menzer probably got the distinction correct, which is discussing the need, the reason, and the basis for needing to go through the acquisition without speaking. I think the dividing line is once you're speaking about the condition and factors that play a piece of the asking price or the ultimate price that ends up being offered, it can't be summarized and needs to stay confidential.
Right.
So to the extent you want to talk about things in advance, it would have to be things that are not specific to the property. I think general things like, hey, this is a good opportunity to look at this property because it's in the right place. That's not terribly significant as to the factors, nor will that necessarily signal an increase in price. But here's the key: anything that you say that would have potential to increase the price of the property, that's what you want to keep confidential.
Okay, well, we're still in open session. Before we move into executive session, let's have at least the pieces of the presentation that relate to the need and the limitations of the building. I'll turn it over to the sheriff's team to go through that, and then we'll.
So that I don't mess this up, I can talk about the current status of where we are, the
Yeah.
current buildings that we're occupying.
Why you're looking at a different.
And why we're looking to move somewhere else.
But not
That's
about a
it.
specific building.
Not about any specific building, we're just talking about the current. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, currently as sheriff, I am responsible for 3 separate buildings currently. I'm responsible for the jail off Ferguson Street, that is 1 bureau. I am responsible for support services, which is the courthouse, building 3, that is another bureau. I am responsible for a 3rd property, which is the FOB out on New Market Street, which is our patrol, our field services bureau. Both, when we're talking specifically here, we're exempting the jail. The jail is pretty much a brand new facility. We're just talking about support services, which are my detectives, and then patrol, which is all of our patrol deputies and field services. So for those 2 buildings, New Market Street and Building 3, both were built in the 20th century. New Market is an old playground warehouse factory kind of deal. So it's got just over 10,000 square feet of office space, and then it's got a ton of warehouse space. The courthouse, obviously, everyone knows what Building 3 is, and that is where I work out of, as well as my administration and our detectives. Neither one of those properties is big enough to absorb the other bureau. So I think that's been the biggest limitation, is that the courthouse can't accept patrol, and patrol can't accept the courthouse. As of right now, it looks like we pay approximately $276,000 a year in rent to the Port of Olympia for the Field Operations Bureau.
Say that again, number again.
$276,000 a year. That building is not owned, it is leased through the Port of Olympia. And they have stated they will not sell the property. The most we could do is buy the building and still lease the property, which we didn't feel like was a great deal. Building 3 is county owned, and through whatever weird process that government works, we pay the county about $183,000 a year and whatever we call that. Rent is how I think about it in my head, but it's interfunds or whatever that is. So between the two of them, it's just shy of $500,000 a year. We are out of space at both locations. So if we were fully staffed right now, we would definitely not have space. The moment that any of those public safety deputies comes on board. At the Field Operations Bureau specifically, it is pretty bad. We have a lot of warehouse space, which is great. But when it comes to actual office space, all of my sergeants share very small offices. Those offices are leaking water. We have buckets set up. Our narcotics task force is in there. They have buckets set up. And I mean, we have our minimum staffing at any point in time is 7 deputies working. There's enough room for 4 computers. So we are just completely maxed out of space when it comes to the Field Operations Bureau. Up at the courthouse, we also have 0 office space left. So we have, I think coming up, we have a financial operations assistant that will be hired with the new money. And we are trying to figure out where in open space we can just put a desk inside the courthouse. So with both of those buildings at max capacity, we also have parking constraints. As everyone knows, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the parking issues at the courthouse because I'm sure everyone here has been almost beat to death with those complaints. But our employees are part of that as well. So we have just enough parking for our detectives to park outside the door. Our evidence detectives, we've got a couple parking spots, and then the rest of my employees walk, I think over towards building 7, that's along the other Evergreen Park Drive. So the parking is a significant issue. And the last piece of this is evidence. There's been conversation swirling about moving the sheriff's office from building 3 to building 5. The issue with that is that evidence can't go with them. So in the event that the county were to say, hey, the sheriff's office has to move to building 5, I would then be managing 3 bureaus across 4 buildings, with evidence being in its own standalone building. And so we would be trending backwards, not forward. All of my employees have expressed a significant interest in having patrol and detectives work out of the same building. We are the only police department in this entire county that works out of 2 separate buildings. And as seen by the recent rash of homicides, it just creates issues. We have deputies who are going out to scenes with detectives, and then they're both going to different locations. They're logging evidence in different locations. They're not talking to each other. They are getting phone calls at different points in time. They're having to reconvene at different locations. It is a logistical nightmare that no other agency in this county is going through. Everyone works in the same building as their detectives. And as I'm sure you can just see, working around the atrium, you have the ability to walk across the hallway and talk to a counterpart. You can pass by each other and say hello. You can exchange information and say, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, there was this break in this case. Be on the lookout for this car. None of those things are occurring. They occur over email. They occur very, very, very rare times, obviously. So all of those things put together has just created a significant need for us to just find a place where both of my bureaus are in the same building. They're working together. It's not a building that we're moving into for 6 more months before we move again, and then move again, and then move again. I'm not entirely privy to all the historical knowledge, but we've moved quite a few times as a sheriff's office over the last 2 decades. So, yes, Commissioner.
Would you like to touch on the high-speed fiber optic piece?
Yes, I also forgot. For those of you that are not aware, at the Field Operations Bureau, which is where all of our deputies go to offload body cam footage and log evidence and do those kinds of things, the internet speed there is, I think, roughly in the 30 megabit per second range. There's no high-speed internet. That building gets its internet by beaming a microwave across the road to an abandoned state facility where it downloads basically at DOL or whatever AOL, whatever it used to be, dial-up speeds back in the day. And we have gone through a number of different attempts to mitigate this issue with IT. We tried a cell phone tower. It was slower. Comcast says that there's internet at that building next door. It would actually be slower within what they can provide. And I think the cost for fiber optic right now is up near $100,000 to have that installed. The state has advised us that at any point in time, the internet will be shut off at that building because they're not really paying the bill anymore. So we don't know when, but at some point in time, the largest bureau that I have on the commission side will not have internet anymore. That's created a major problem with our body cam, dash cam footage as well. We have a ton of footage that is just sitting up in the cloud, and we cannot view it. Oftentimes it buffers, we can't access it, which has created a number of complaints from prosecution, defense, and Superior and District Court.
So that is the other challenge, is the internet piece. And the big question the county's been trying to figure out is, do we invest in a piece of property that we don't necessarily plan on staying in long-term?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Can I clarify, you said something about $100,000 to install fiber optic. Are you saying that would be the cost if you were to install it at your current location or just in general? Is that an option to be able to install that at the current location?
Yes.
But it would just come with that price tag?
Yes, it would. Basically, the issue occurring at the Field Operations Bureau right now, the land is owned by the port. It's then managed by, the building is kind of like almost owned by a separate person. And they are willing to increase our rates if we invest in fiber optic or do these different things. So the cost right now, I think it was like $96,000. It's gone up from 50 or 40 to 96 now.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions regarding the current state of the situation for the sheriff's team?
No questions.
I'll also add, we are also the only agency that I know of that does not have secure parking. So that was another issue that's been brought up, is that our deputies walk out into the middle of the night with no secure parking and get into their vehicles. Every other agency has some sort of gated parking.
One thing you didn't touch on, it's kind of obvious, but you're saying space is maxed out, but we're about to embark on a process of, with the public safety tax, of increasing your staffing considerably, and obviously I would imagine that's just gonna be, I mean, can you talk about how that would fit? If we didn't do anything, what's gonna happen when you bring on X number of new deputies and their support?
Well, for the support staff, we will, we'll find out just how close we can cram people into each other before we get some sort of complaint through, I don't know who. We're talking about chairs touching each other in an office or something like that. For our deputies, they will not have office space whatsoever. So the expectation would then be that they work entirely out of their car. And we also anticipate that then the complaints of working your whole shift typing like this may also increase as well. So, because again, our deputies can do a lot of things out of their vehicles. They tend not to, because every chiropractor in the world will tell them that they need to get out of the car and sit at least square with what they're doing, and it's impossible to do in a patrol car. So at this point in time, the only solution we would have is work out of your car.
Okay. So with all that, should we then, I think that now we will move into an executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1B to consider selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price. The topic is purchase of a building. We have approximately 60 minutes allotted. Commissioners' action may follow. And we are doing the announcement here in a moment. In terms of who's in the room for this session, is there limitations on that? I know we have some visitors here.
It is completely up to you. I invited Rick because he has information directly from Evan regarding the building. But Rich is excused, and then it's up to you who from the sheriff's office you would like to have in your session.
We've got an undersheriff, me, my chief of support services, my chief of finance for any questions about rates we're paying, and then I brought Captain Johnson as well because he's actually been the key piece over the last 5 or 6 years about the renovation at the FOB. So I felt it was relevant. He has a lot of historical knowledge. Not that we need to call on him for any
Your
reason.
choice.
Okay, and then,
Rich is part of my staff and he's excused.
okay, yeah. All right, so I guess we're good.
Okay.
And before we, recording wise, are we good? I'm looking at. 21, we're out of executive session. No commissioner action is following this session today. And we've come to the end of our business agenda, so we are adjourned, back in session tomorrow at 9 a.m. for an agenda setting. Thank you.